Good morning. All right. It's Monday, May 1st. I gotta tell you, do you know how much easier it is now that I actually do the date first thing in the morning, right? Well, I'm not uploading anymore either. Raj is uploading everything. So if you missed this weekend, it'll be in the listening portal probably in the well, sometime today. Actually, I'm not sure what time Raj will be able to get it up, but if you're wanting to do that. So we talked, I think, a little bit, and most of yesterday's session is actually a complete blank for me. But I do think we talked a little bit about control because I have a little bit of notes in there. And so I'm back into part of my notes from last time where I was guided to open, and it talks about, again, asking the questions, what area or where are we trying to control things? And control is simply because we're searching and seeking for safety and security. And it's a false safety and security. And so if we can ask that question and ask ourselves honestly, where are we trying to control? So at the time of this writing, which is 3 or 4 years ago, I was trying to control the growth of my business. At the time, intimacy with Rob, I was trying to control that. It was a control situation versus just allowing it to kind of unfold, and other people's opinions of me. So those are three things that I kept on experiencing I'd say like my groundhog days, right? And those specifically had to do with safety and security, right? There's a couple other things that were I was experiencing, but less relevant to what I wanted to share with all of you today. And the challenge in trying to control the outcome is we actually can't see the way to transform seek out, find, be shown the solution, because we're trying to control. We're in control mode. So we have a very, very narrow viewpoint or focus on how to transform it. And that's because our brain is a goal achieving machine. So if we're wanting control, our brain is looking at ways and means to control it. And so if you're the person who has those groundhog days with that, of course you can't see other ways to behave, other attitudes, other beliefs to bring into your awareness, because you are either it could be an unconsciously trying to control it, or you're in awareness, you're trying to control it. So you can't see the opportunities for transformation because of that. So a question to ask yourself, and you might again have to adjust this question, is what would be the outcome if I just let go of control? Right? What would be the outcome if I just let go of the control? And chances are, excuse me, sorry, for those of you just listening, I have cat hair all over my face, and so I'm scratching my nose. And everyone around me is scratching their face and their nose. I'm like a cat. Right? I've got extra hair. So, side note. But what would be the outcome if I let go of control? And when I did this exercise, there was some that I was like, oh, I could totally see the possibilities, but most of it was the unknown. I didn't know, or I had some sort of story that I would make up with not necessarily even evidence of that story, right? So what would be the outcome if you let go of control? And you can ask specific questions. These are still open-ended questions, but what am I afraid of, right? What am I concerned about? If you need to ask specific questions, then think about things that you know that you've been afraid of before, but ask that direct yes, no question. So for my manifesting generators and generators, this will be a game changer for you, because chances are you've just been asking open-ended questions around this, and you'll just spin. right? You'll just spin. So for example, if we think about business is simple, right? It's all about marketing, sales, and operations. And if we're not doing the thing, so we're not making phone calls to enroll people into our programs or ask them if they'd be interested in. And then the open question would be, what am I afraid of? So that might put you into a spin. You could ask a specific question. Am I afraid of rejection? Am I afraid people will say yes? And of course, not at the same time. Ask them individually, right? Am I afraid I'll get too busy? Am I afraid that people will say no? Because that might not necessarily mean rejection for you. Am I afraid that people will say yes? Right? And you can go down the specific pathway and ask those, and ask questions that you don't even think that might even be a part of it, right? Like, am I afraid to succeed? Am I afraid to fail? Am I afraid of the future? Like really, really specific. And even those of us who don't need open-ended questions to explore, we can ask ourselves those same really, really direct questions. And then we can go back into this open-ended question, like, what would be the outcome if I just let go of control? And for me, it was, I didn't know. And that felt like death, right? Like, and then I realized, well, I could just make up, I could just make up a story, because when we have fear around something, we're afraid of the unknown. We're afraid of something that we might have had an experience in our past. And so we, of course, most of us have been programmed that if we behaved that way in the past, we are absolutely going to behave that way in the present, or that way in the future. But what if that was a bullshit storyline that we just believed? What if we didn't believe that? What if we went, okay, so if I'm afraid of that, if I'm afraid I'm going to make the same mistake. So with money, that was mine. With money, what did I learn about myself in all the process of almost going bankrupt? What did I learn about what to do? What did I learn about what not to do? How was I making decisions? And that's when I realized that every time I have like some sort of money bullshit thing come up, it's because I made a decision based in fear. I made a decision based in lack, right? And it could even be something like, I don't know enough, which that's true. There are lots of things that I don't know enough about. But what I started to see was, it wasn't that I didn't know enough. It was that I felt I wasn't enough. I'm not enough. And so if I buy this thing, that I'm going to know enough, and then I'm enough. And so I started to see my pattern of, it wasn't the illusion was I was purchasing things because I didn't know enough. The truth was, I still had I'm not enough going on. And it was like, when I have this, I can do this. When I have this, I can do this. When I understand how to do an Instagram reel, then people will notice my program. And then I would go, okay, well, how about I'll just go, I don't know, find a program or do research on Instagram reel. And then I'd be like, I totally don't want to do an Instagram reel. Technology. So the excuse was technology. I don't understand how to do it. It takes too much time. So then I wouldn't do it. So what does that do then? The pattern is, well, then I don't know how to do it. So it's okay. It's not that I'm not enough. It's that I don't know how. So you can see how that kind of has this infinity loop to it in a shadow way, right? So, or in the circle of, if we think about we talked about we have a belief, we have a thought, we have an emotion, we have a result, which could be self-sabotage or procrastination, which solidifies the belief, right? And we have an action, pardon me, which leads to the result, which solidifies the belief. So when we look at this is where the radical honesty comes in, because it wasn't that I was afraid of the growth of the business or intimacy with Rob. There was like a whole bunch of layers underneath that, right? And so, and I got to layers by saying, well, what would be the opposite of that? I'm afraid of this. Well, what would be the opposite of that? If I believe that, what would I be afraid of? What would I have worry around? What would I have doubt around? And I just started to keep on asking really specific questions and listened to how my body responded. And then I used different tools, because as a reflector, I can't necessarily always rely on how your bodies will respond, because I'm a reflector. So my body responds differently. It actually will take on even some of what's happening with the planets and the transits, right? So I need to like bring multiple tools into my tool belt in order to follow my divine guidance and my intuition. So if we let go of control and we understand what the outcome could be when we let go of control, sit with that. And how do you feel about that? Is there still worry? Is there still doubt? Is there still fear? And then dive into that and dive into that and dive into that. This is a process. This does take time. And so then the reason why I think no, I can't use that word. It's not about thinking. The reason why we do this is because we're avoiding knowing the truth. And you're avoiding knowing the truth because then you'd have to change, right? Then you'd have to take different action. You'd have to behave differently. And there is fear in behaving differently. And the fear is, well, what if I can't do this? And then you must totally suck, right? That's like in right, real simple layman's terms. I know what I need to do and I'm not doing it, therefore I suck. So I'm going to make up unconscious stories, right? And belief systems, because I don't want to do what's necessary, right? I don't want to do what's necessary. And so because there's work, I'm going to have to change my attitude. I'm going to have to change my habits, my routines, my behavior. I'm going to have to learn to be uncomfortable or be comfortable with discomfort, right? Damn it. That means if I want to fill a program, I might have to pick up the phone and not just like PM people or text message or email people, right? I'm actually going to have conversation with people and face rejection and imposter syndrome and all of those things that I didn't want to face in doing that, right? So instead, what we do is we just stay in Groundhog Day. We stay because we don't want to make the tough choices, and there's no judgment, right? So give yourself a break. There's no judgment in that. And the human beings, we are always looking for the simplest, fastest, easiest way, right? Because our brain is a goal achieving machine. So it's like, oh, that could like sting a little bit. So I don't really want to go down that path. So I'm not. So instead, I'm just gonna, have Ranchal have this experience of fear around money, because then she won't do anything because she's afraid. She's afraid of business growth. She's afraid that, right, she'll get burnt out. She's afraid that her marriage or relationship will end with Rob if she gets too busy and too successful in work. Like, I had a whole bunch of stories around success, right? People won't like me anymore. I'll be all alone, right? Rob will leave me. He'll find another girlfriend. He'll have an affair. Things that made absolutely no sense. And a lot of times it doesn't make sense. A lot of times our brains just take from a scientific perspective, our brain just takes the fastest path, right? And so intimacy for me led to like grief. Right? As soon as I love someone deeply, they leave me. Well, why the fuck would I want to love someone deeply then? I mean, like, it kind of makes sense, right? So that's what happens with our brains. Just go, oh, she had this experience once or 3 times or whatever that is, and and that's what it's like. And lots of it is, we may not even be in awareness of it. And we don't have to go back into the depths of our past to understand and spend time there and feel bad. Just know it can be just like this simple random thought of, oh yeah, I remember having that experience, and that's just coming up. That's just, it's playing over and over and over and over and over again, right? If we can accept that our biggest enemy is control, trying to control your outcome. And in that the whole mind fuck that we talked about yesterday, once you let go of control, you actually have control. So it's kind of funny, right? Because you're controlling your thoughts, you're controlling your conscious thoughts. You're like, ooh, I'm in total awareness that I'm in resistance to, and then whatever that is. And guess what? That's just too bad, Rachel. That's too bad. You don't want to, I don't, who wants to scrub a toilet? I mean, maybe some people really like scrubbing the toilet, but I don't like a dirty toilet. So like, then there's lots of options. I don't have to scrub the toilet. I could hire scrubbing the toilet out, right? I could hire that, right? So I don't have to do it. And so then, but my yeah, but could be, yeah, but, my house is really messy because I struggle with that. So then I'm going to be crazy like my mom, who used to clean before the housekeeper came so they wouldn't judge my mom, right? My mom used to do that. I'm just going to straighten up and clean so the housekeeper can clean. Isn't that why you hire somebody? Right? But we have stories around that, right? And all of us have stories. And if we can be, open to the fact that everything's in a story and an illusion, right? And just be playful with it, then things can unfold for us, right? Then we can take a look at where are we trying to control the outcome and just surrender into that. Because if we let go of the control, and again, we're afraid of letting go of the control. So I'm asked to say this again. You're afraid of letting go of the control, and you're afraid of looking at things because then you're going to have to. You're going to have to. And I use those words really lightly because I don't use have to. Ranchal doesn't use the word have to, right? But what your guides are saying is then you will feel like you have no choice. You will have to then change, and you're afraid of changing. Even though you're really uncomfortable where you are, some of you, and you really don't like where you are, some of you, it's easier for you to stay in this because you're comfortable with where you're at. You're in familiarity, which is safety and security, a false safety and security, and a false sense of control. And so what if today was the day that you decided that you could surrender, let go of, right, control, that you could, we talked yesterday about the words control, dominion, dominate, sovereignty, finding a word that resonates with you. What if you were willing to release all of that and become sovereign, in your thoughts, and how to change would be shown to you when you let go. The how to change would be shown to you when you let go. But there's no reason for you to know how to behave differently because you're not willing to. You're not willing to. And that's controversial in nature. And I'm tweaking people. I can feel you. Excuse me while I move some energy around that. I can feel that. And would you just be willing for a moment to accept? Because there's no judgment in that. There's no right or wrong to it, but you're feeding yourself an illusion. You say you want one thing, but your behavior does not match. So the only way the behavior can match is if you get really clear and truthful about what you're trying to control. And then your behavior can match your outcome because you'll know how to behave differently. You'll have the ways and means, you'll have the tools, you'll have the resources, and you'll have, and I don't really like to use the word willpower, because in human design, you have a will center, and if it's defined, which is mean colored, you can draw upon willpower. If it's open and like not colored, then you can't draw upon willpower, right? I don't have an open, I have an open will center. So when I realized that I had no willpower per se, air quoting here, but I can draw upon different tools. I can draw upon different times. So for me, what I do is I actually watch where the planets are. That's called transits in human design, so that I can actually, when I see that my will center is defined, then I know that I can really draw upon willpower, right? I also know that I can't bring in a new habit. It's replacing a habit. So, for example, I needed to stop drinking coffee a couple of months ago. I knew I couldn't just stop drinking coffee. I needed to replace it with drinking something else, right? And so I decided to drink tea for the first week. That just didn't feel the same. And then I was recommended to drink organic cacao. And so I'd make myself a organic cacao drink, right? So all of those things, when I decided to, for example, decided that my health was important, and the person one of the people I was working with said, what if coffee was the thing that was standing in your way? It was like, well, okay, if I say my health is important, then what behaviors of mine are not supporting that statement? My health is important. So I said, my health is important, but I'm still drinking coffee. And I wasn't drinking a lot of coffee. That was the excuse. I'm not drinking a lot of coffee, right? But what if it was just like a drop of coffee? And I thought, well, what if it is, right? And so I thought, well, I can give up coffee for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year if need be. So where are you? And so part of that whole piece is trying to control my health, right? That was attached to it, trying to control my health, right? And so all of those pieces. Right? So where are you willing? Where are you willing? Are you willing then to turn over this to spirit, to divine intelligence, right? So for me, I was like, I didn't even know where I was. I was like, oh, I'm totally in flow, right? Which is true. I feel like my life is in ease and flow, but ease and flow is different than control. But in my mind, I had attached control to ease and flow. So you see how insidious this can be, right? But how do we know? How do we know what areas we're trying to control? Look at the areas of where you're frustrated. Look at the areas of where your outcome isn't where you want it to be. Look at the areas that you have your Groundhog Day, right? Look at the areas of where your triggers are. Look at the areas of where I know I should be doing this, but instead I'm doing this, right? Look at the areas of where your life isn't where it wants to be. I'm just trying to use different words for all of you. Look at the areas where you have an unfulfilled desire. Look at the areas where you're afraid to look at, right? That you're avoiding. Look at the areas that you procrastinate in. Look at the areas that maybe you think that you have self-sabotage. And you're to do this with such a gentle, like there's no need for judgment, because that will not support you, right, in your decision on moving forward. So this isn't a place and space where you need to judge. So as you look at these places that you're wanting or control, even maybe not even realizing it, and again, I'll go back to this. What is the reason you are controlling, or what's the perceived story, right? And you might have to ask more specific questions, right? And so under control is fear. So you might want to ask, what are you afraid of? Right? What are you afraid of? Because that also might get you a different answer, right? As I start to explore this, something that came up with for me, which took some digging, was one of the reasons why I was afraid of having intimacy with Rob was because what if I found out that he's the asshole that everyone told me he is, right? And I was like, then what? Then what does that? And I was like, what I was feeling was I was experiencing this resistance to introducing Rob to people, right? Like certain people that I knew. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And, I, under the guise of people are going to think he's an asshole or he's obnoxious or he's takes over conversation or he's cocky, which he can be all of those things. And what will people say about him? And what I realized as I went into this, it had nothing to do with what people would say about him, but what will people say about me? Right? That I'm dating an asshole or I'm dating someone, quote unquote, like Rob. And then I thought, well, I wonder what would, what would people say about me? Like maybe his friends think she's such a bitch, right? Or she's so controlling. Or then I started to giggle, right? Because I was like, well, they would never, I'm amazing. Like no one would ever think of that. So then I started to see like the silliness of how my brain was tricking me, right? And so it had nothing to do, of course, with him and everything to do with me. What if I get hurt? Right? What if this isn't, if I hold him at bay and then I get hurt, it's okay, right? Because then I wasn't really, really close to him. Like it would be okay then. But what if I loved him like completely like I loved Darcy, and not comparing the two relationships because relationships always feel different for me. But what if I did that and then he ended up being an asshole like Darcy, right? In the same capacity. And growth of the business was what if I get super successful again and I had an experience with Darcy where I became the major breadwinner and it was really stressful. It was really stressful for me to be the major breadwinner in my house, right? In a relationship. And what if I had that experience again? And what I realized was every fear was attached to my past. And then I went, okay, what if I could create a new future? And then I went into, well, what am I afraid of the future? And then I was able to come up with what I was afraid of in the future. And then the next exercise piece of this is, and what if I just lived in the now? What if I just lived in this present moment and made a decision for this moment? And I didn't have to worry about my future and I could let go of the past. And all I had to worry about, and worry, air quoting that because it's really not about a worry, but those are the words that I used. All I had to be concerned about, focus on, prepare for, right, was the present. And what if that could be my life? What if all I needed to focus on was today? And what if at 7 a.m., all I need to focus on was, what am I doing in this moment of time? I have a calendar and everything goes into my calendar. So what if I don't need to worry about drop balls? And do I drop balls? Yes, I do. Yep. Yeah. Do I have judgment around them anymore? No. No, I don't. Right. Do I have, do I feel bad? Yeah, I do. I feel bad. But I don't beat myself up. It's like, okay, how can I not have that happen next time? Right. So under this really simple word of control, there's multiple layers, right? And I think one of the challenges that can happen, right, when we're together is that because I'm channeling for you all on a daily basis, So some of you will resonate with this message and some of you won't, which is the whole point, right? Is hearing the message and not doing anything with it. Right? It won't take you long. There's digging, but it wouldn't take you long to spend the day. And I'm not talking about like the next minute by minute and second by second, but it wouldn't take you long to open yourself up to contemplating the idea of control today and just send it out to the universe, right? And for me, what that looks like is if I'm meant to do anything more with this information, then please show me, be clear, be specific, right? Make it so apparent for me that I'm to do something with this information. Show me how to embody sovereignty, right? Show me how to embody the release of fear. Show me what I need to do today. Like, show me what I need to do in the next 10 minutes. I mean, it can be that specific, right? Whatever resonates with you. Because there will always be, I mean, the cool thing is there's always information here at different times for you. And it will sometimes feel like repeat and repeat because this is how our intellect works. This is how we function as a being here on planet Earth at this point in time. This is how it works because we've decided to embody a physical body. And we have a brain that's wired the way it's wired. And so it will feel like repeat and repeat. It's like when we look at the universal laws, we can know something, but are we embodying it? We might know about the law of attraction as an example, but are we embodying it? And there are so many layers, and it's a journey, right? It's a journey. And when you become aware of it, it's like I used the word worry, and I was like, well, that's interesting. When I said, I think this is what I decided to worry about, and I went, oh, it's not interesting. I still have this part of me that thinks that she needs to worry. So I know what I'm working on today. It's like, where the hell did that come from? Because I thought that was gone. And what parts of me are worrying? And where am I storing worrying in my body? And is it mine? Or is it, was I channeling for somebody? Right. And I guess that's the last thing I'll end with this is when you are feeling something or you say something like that, you can ask, does this belong to me or is this someone else's, right? So how I do this is I say to myself, truth, does this belong to me? And then I'll get a feeling, or I might use some of the tools, right? So I use muscle testing lots, right? So I say, truth, does this belong to me? And no. So the worry doesn't belong to me. I was just channeling for somebody. Okay, cool. Then I don't have to go into the deep dive of where I'm storing worrying. But I can say, truth, am I storing worry in my body? Yeah. Yeah. So that one didn't belong to me. However, I'm storing worry in my body. And so every moment of every day is an opportunity, and not to be overwhelmed, but you'll just pick it up. Oh, I get to, that's what came to my awareness today. That's what I'm going to focus on in this moment. And then something else might come up, right? Because you're brilliant and amazing, and your brain is a goal achieving machine. And you are divine. You are a fractal energy of divine. And what divine wants for you is so it's just like unimaginable what divine wants for you. We have no limits other than the brain pan. That's it. This is the brain, right? Our unconscious thoughts, our beliefs, our paradigms, and as far as what we can imagine is our limits. That's it. Because we are fractal energies of divine source energy. When you grasp that, when you realize that you have the power to create miracles, you can define a miracle however you want to. And the only thing that's limiting you is, as Jacob, my son, calls it, your brain pan, right? Then the fear dissipates. And that doesn't mean that I don't have fears or that everything is like perfect, because it's not about perfection either. Because we're a fractal energy of divine source energy, and we decided to be here on Earth to play this amazing game called the journey of life. And think about any story. Think about Harry Potter as an example. Or if you haven't seen Harry Potter, another show that you love. There's heroes, right? There's antagonists, there's protagonists. It's a journey. And it's fun. Although I'm sure, right, when Harry Potter was facing Voldemort, that wasn't fun, but it was we were all on our edge of our seats, right? And our life is like that. Our life is meant to be this series of the ups and downs, but you can be in the isness of the situation, no judgment of self, but be in the isness of it and be in awe. Be in awe as you're experiencing being triggered. Holy shit, look at that. I'm having a hissy fit because I wasn't invited to go on a motorcycle ride. And I don't ride motorcycles. I don't drive them, but I'm still having a hissy fit. I'm still feeling like I'm being left out. I'm the kid at the edge of the circle on the field who wasn't called in. Triggered, core wound, core fear from being 6 years old and being the last person picked in the team. And that's how I felt yesterday about Rob going on a motorcycle trip without me. And he drives a sport bike. There's no way this body could fit in a sport bike. I'd crush him like a bug. Right? He's 5'8", lean, right? But I was triggered, and I watched. So it wasn't that I wasn't triggered. I was totally triggered. But I watched myself being triggered. I'm like, it's just like, look at that. Look at that 6-year-old show up in that 54-year-old's body, being and feeling like she's left out, that she's got to work her life around somebody. Can't have a life unless she knows what. I was amazed. It's like, look at all those pieces of opportunity for growth, right? Waiting for her partner to come home so she could do the things that she does, because that's what I move into. What are you doing today, Rob? So I can work my life around him. He does not once asked me to work my schedule around him, right? And so watching myself lose my shit, right? Feeling left out, feeling alone, feeling I'm bored now. I have no hobbies. Poor Rangel, right? And then going, wow, that is so cool. That is so cool that I behaved like a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, right? And that's what can happen. You can experience it. Doesn't mean it, like, at least for me, it has not meant that I don't have shit days and that I don't have moments like that and that I don't feel sorry for myself and that, right? For me, and maybe it's different for other people, but for me, I'm in complete awareness. And then it's like, and then I'm in awe. I'm in awe of the creation of, wow. Because it shows me where my opportunities of growth are, right? It shows me that I'm still, part of me is codependent with Rob. It still shows me that I have pieces of that in my personality. And it still shows me that my self-esteem might still be attached to what he thinks of me. That's fascinating to me. And that's what can happen with us, right? We don't have to go into judgment or guilt or shame. Just be like totally in awe of the stories that you create. because we are like amazing, right? Amazing, right? Because I'm sure, God goes in the corner and pouts when he doesn't get his own way. All right. I love you all very much. Mwah. Have a good one. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.